Hi, my name is Newell Davis with World Composting, and today I want to talk about fruit fly control. Now, this is an issue I've had recently in my house, or in my basement, I should say, and throughout my house because of it, and that is having fruit flies. Now, fruit flies come in on the food that you have, so it's not something that you typically, if you bought worms online, they're typically not going to have fruit fly larvae in there, especially during the transport and everything. But if you put food in your bin or bag system and it is not frozen or has been cooked in some way, you are going to possibly be introducing fruit fly larvae to your bins. Now, I go through cycles. Typically, I don't have any fruit fly issues, but every once in a while when I do, it's a massive issue because I have so many bins, so many bags. It just seems to take up the majority of my time trying to deal with it. So I want to go over some of the solutions that I have found and some of the solutions that I'm looking at to see if they still work. Now, during the course of this video, this is my first video where I'm making it. I'm actually going to be trying out one of these solutions, and by the end of this video, I'll know if it works because I'm going to wait to edit it together. So the first thing I want to talk to you, though, is is these yellow sticky traps. So these are standard sticky traps. I'll have a link down below. But they're not yellow right now because they've got a sticker on top of it. But you put these in your bins, and then at that point, what happens is the fruit flies land on it, they stick, and they can't reproduce. It's very simple, very easy. They also have hanging versions of these. They have all different types of versions. I do like these because I can put these in closed systems. So I can put this in a bin, and then I can put the lid on top of it, and it will be in there. And when I open it up, I'll see fruit flies on there. So that way they didn't lay more eggs or, larvae in the system. So that's the first thing that I really do to try to control fruit flies as far as once they're an issue. Now, the other thing that I have talked about and I've shown in the past are my bug lights. So I have this right here is a bug light. So when I take this cover off, you can see that there's these electrodes in there, and that's out of the light now, but there's electrodes in there. They're going to zap anything, and there's a blue light. So these work actually incredibly well as long as you have them high enough up in your basement so they'll see that light, they're going to go to it, or you can put them right over a bin that has infested and they'll hopefully go and land on it and kill themselves on here first before they go anywhere else. And this does work well if it's for minor issues. You've got like a couple of fruit flies, especially if you have bins in your house and they're coming, you bring in fresh fruit, they could actually go down your stairs and get into your bins, believe it or not, because I don't put any non-frozen food typically in my bins. It's almost all gets frozen. So if it's being infested with fruit flies in my basement, it's typically from upstairs in the kitchen, which is just around the corner once you go up the stairs. So these work really well, I feel, for controlling that. I've had I'll find fruit flies on here, but I won't find any in my bins at times. So that's another way to kind of just as a minor control. This does not do really well once you have an infestation. And the reason why I say that is because these electrodes get filled up. So eventually you have bugs all over this, and it stops working. So you really need to make sure you clean this. Actually, let me just show you one real quick here. There is a brush right here that comes with it that you use to clean the grates off. I typically do that right over my shop vac while it's on, and they all just get sucked into the shop vac and disappear. But that is another really good way to help control small populations of fruit flies. Now, the big issue is when you start getting large populations. And that's where it takes a long time to get rid of them from your system. And these solutions that I just showed you just don't work all that well for paid solutions. Now, there's one other free one. I've covered it before. I've covered it multiple times. I'm just going to mention it. That is, your homemade solutions, your vinegar fly trap, where you put some vinegar, a dash of, or apple cider vinegar, a dash of soap, or you put a cover over it with some poked holes, and that way they get in and can't get out. Those work, but I don't find them to work quite as well as the paid solutions do. I have used them in the past. You can put them in your bins, but I found that these paid-for solutions tend to work a little bit better and more long-term. And also, you don't have to worry about them drying out. I've had that happen before with my vinegar, where all of a sudden it just dried out to nothing, and then I found tons of fruit flies on it. So, there's a fruit fly right now that's landing on my face. As we're talking about them right here, they're probably trying to attack me. So, the key is trying to prevent them from getting in, but once they are there, they can become a major, major hassle. And that's where you have this right here. This is mosquito bits, and this is a BTI, or a bacteria, that is natural predator of mosquitoes. Now, it also happens to work on fungus gnats, it mentions. It does not mention fruit flies. but I've heard multiple people have had great success with this over fruit flies. Now, my first thought was you just sprinkle this in and you just get it wet and it's good. I found that that does not work at all. It did not work in my systems, and I thought it was a complete and utter failure. What I did find from people online, and thank you for everyone that responded about this, is that you need to dump this in water. And you need to let it evaporate or soak into that water, and then it's a live bacteria, and then you pour that over the soil. These are naturally occurring, by the way. I can't speak for this product in particular, but there are organic versions of this, and this is approved for organic gardening. So I know a lot of people are worried about putting toxics into their soils or into their bins because these go into their gardens typically. Like, I know that for me, I grow tomatoes typically with them and stuff like that. This should not be an issue. Now, as I said, this is not organic certified, but at the same time, its primary ingredient here, I think, was just that bacteria. So there's a couple things to hold them together, and that's it. So this should be safe. I'm not going to say it is, but it should be safe for your gardens. And organic gardens, you can probably find an organic version of this. I'll see if I can find one and link it below also in case you're curious. But that is the next thing that I am really trying. I've tried that out in my vermibag. It seemed to work, but I think I maybe should have changed it up a little bit, maybe sprayed it on, got everything on the top sort of soaking, and dug it in a little bit too. So we're going to go to a bin that I have, or a bag I should say, that is infested with fruit flies. I'm having massive issues. I dumped some of this in. It didn't do anything, it seemed like. And we're going to go and take a look and see if we can fix it within a week or 2 weeks by adding this in water form. So first, we need to mix this into some water and get it ready. All right, so we've got our mosquito bits here. We've got our jar of water. And the first thing we got to do here, press to open this. We're just going to shake a little bit of this in. You don't need a whole lot from everything I've read. I'm going to put a little bit more than that in. So, hold on, I'm going to take this lid off here. I find it pours a little slow through that. I'm just going to pour in a little bit more. There we go. That's plenty. That's more probably than I need in that amount of water. But there we go. Now we're just going to let it sit there, and we're going to let it soak in. All right, so we have our mix right here of our BTI, which is a, as we said, a bacteria. And then I have a spray bottle here. This is my old spray bottle. This is a Flowmaster. And I'm going to add this into this bottle. So let me put this down for just a second here. We're going to do this right over the bag here. I'm not worried about it getting on here. Hopefully this doesn't plug up with some of these little dots that didn't dissolve fully, but what we're going to do is we're going to pour this in here. I'm going to spray it through here. And that way I can kind of spray it all over the bag. Now I'm going to wear a mask while I'm doing this, along with a shirt or a piece of fabric over that as well. Not all these are coming out, which isn't surprising to me, so there's still some left in here. That's not a big deal. There's still some in here, and most of it probably soaked in here after the hour that I let it sit. So I'm going to put this on now. And this is what I'm going to use to spray down all the bedding material in here. So that this way it has a good amount of, I got to put some pressure in here. So I think that's working. So now this bag has, the last time I opened it was really, really bad. There was tons of fruit flies. They were all over everything. I had thrown in some of these granules, but didn't find it to be working all that well. So we're really going to test this out here and see if this works. So, first thing I'm going to do though is I'm actually, because the last time it was a little bit daunting, I'm actually going to put on my mask now. They were flying all over the place. I have my shop vac here ready to go to suck them up, but I'm going to put on my mask here, and that way you guys can hear me nice and clearly. But I already have it on. Now, as I said, I have my vacuum ready to go. I've got a glove ready to go. So we're going to open this up and see how it's doing. Let me grab my vacuum first, though. All right, shop vac ready to go. Okay, so I now have the bag open. Let's take a look through here. As you can see, I added some of these mosquito bits over here, but they're kind of dry and they don't feel like they're working very well. I'm still seeing, not nearly as bad as it was before, but there's still a lot of fruit flies in here. Lots of, as you can see, these pumpkin plants are growing like crazy in here. I'll just throw this off to the side. I have this shirt over here, or did. This shirt is almost gone. The only thing left is the lettering on here. So that's doing pretty well. Here's a bone. I don't show this bag too often. This is sort of my catch-all bag. Here's actually a piece of that shirt, the plastic, that's all that's left over. I think I'll take that out actually. We don't need that in there anymore. We'll leave the rest of the shirt in there. We're going to just kind of spread this around, just take a look in here, see how it's doing. I haven't opened this in a while due to the fruit flies. There's a pair of underwear or something that I threw in here to see if they'll chew through this. I think it was supposed to be cotton. Seeing lots of fruit flies get around the side now. So just turning this over a little bit just to give you a look in here to see what it looks like. It's a little bit dry, definitely underneath here. More fabric in here that's almost gone. Good amount of worms in here. Still though, lots of fruit flies. I see them still coming out. So what we're going to do though is we're going to spray this down. I'm just trying to mix it up a little bit. More shirts, more fabric in here. I threw a lot of fabric in this one. I've been trying to go through that. And it was a sock, I think. So there's even some pieces of food in here. Now the first thing we're going to do though is I think I'm going to grab some food, and we're going to do a big feeding in here. I think they need some food in here. Just move that shirt over to the side here, because it doesn't look like there's much food left. When I'm looking through here, I see some coffee grounds and stuff, but as far as food goes, I'm not seeing much other food. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to dig in over here on this side. More cloth here, more shirts. I've been trying to go through some of this, as I said, this material that I have. So what we're going to do, we're going to dig out this side, and I'm going to bring over some frozen food to throw in here, which I don't have prepared. I didn't bring any over. I thought there'd still be food left in here, even though I haven't opened it while it was loaded. Give me just a second. All right, so we're going to add, this is all frozen food, mixture of different things. All right, we're just going to throw this in. I'm not going to worry about the worms or anything like that this time. There we go. I'm just going to grab a little bit of fresh bedding to put in here as well, along with some of my crushed crab shell. And crushed eggshell, I should say. It's not just crab, it's also eggshell. Put in just a handful of bedding here since we are going to add some moisture. Oh, no. I made a mess. So there we go, just a little bit of bedding, maybe a little bit more. I just emptied this not too long ago, so there's a whole slew of stuff in here. As far as it's dropped down a lot for as far as where it was. There were still a lot of fruit flies in here. There's probably at least 20 or 50 that got out after I opened it. Now we're going to spray this down. Just like this with this material. So I'm going to keep pumping here. We're going to really saturate this top layer. Get their shirt, get under the side over here. And we're going to see if this, I'm hoping the next time I open this up, really get around the food over here. I know I don't really need a lot of moisture in this bin typically, or this bag. Usually there's enough moisture in there. I don't add any of it. It's a little dry comparatively, but you know, it happens. So we're just going to continue to add this here. Just pump it up a little bit more. Got to hold it a little bit more upright. But I really want to wet this down and make sure that we try to get rid of these fruit flies. Let me get all the sides. By the way, I'm keeping my mask on this entire time. And we'll see if this does it. With the food in there, that should give them something to lay their eggs on too. It's not too deep down in there. So we're going to see We're going to come back here in a week and we're going to see how this is. I'm hoping to find that there are no fruit flies in here. So that's the goal behind this, is to really, you know, get rid of that fruit fly cycle. This should kill the larva. As I said, this is supposed to be organic. Got to pump this up a little bit more. There we go. So you really want to saturate this though, because it's not the fruit flies. This isn't going to kill the fruit flies that are alive and flying around right now. This is going to kill their larvae and where they've laid their eggs and stuff like that. It's going to kill that stuff, and that way they don't come back. So now if I grab one of my little yellow fruit traps and put it in here, that would get the adults. But we're not going to do that this time, because I really want to see how well this works. I'm going to just take this off now. You hear the fizz. I'm going to just dump in the rest of this because I don't really want to have it in the bottle. So, all right. Now it's all in there. Let's give it a week and see how it looks. All right, everyone. It has been 25 days since I started spraying. And I've been spraying using my sprayer here with more and more as this went along. I sprayed, you know, and I'm using, as I said, these mosquito bits. Now this is, these are all going to be linked down below as far as purchasing all these items, but the question is how did it work? And I'm going to open this up here, but I want to let you know that I have been opening it up, and as I said, I've been spraying more on here and been doing stuff like that. But I'm still finding that there are fruit flies in here. And you can see there's a couple up here right now near the surface, you know, that are going to escape. I have my shop vac right here, which is what I found the most effective way of vacuuming them up. Now, saying all that, I have noticed a decrease in the population here. So, whereas before, there was just tons and tons and tons of fruit flies when I opened this up, it's now to the point where I can open it up and I see, you know, like one right here that I'll get and knock off or vacuum up, and, you know, there'll be a couple that'll fly out, but it's not the numbers I saw before. Now, before I started doing this, I was getting, you know, I'd open this up and 30 would come out of this bag. And now it's really manageable. Now, remember, with that, I also fed. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to kind of dig in here to this food section and just take a look here and see how it looks. So I had the shirt on top of it. As you can see, the shirt is starting to get eaten away already. Lots of worms over here. I'm not seeing too many fruit flies in this area, but as I said, I have been pulling them out when I do open it up. You know, here's a couple stalks. But now, with this, I just want to review again sort of what has been going on. I guess this shirt has some, wasn't 100% cotton maybe. This one right here, it looks like there's a mesh to it of some sort that maybe is part of it. Same thing with this shirt right here. There is a piece of plastic on it, just so you guys can see. This plastic will never break down, but they're taking all the shirt away from it. So I'm just going to rip that off real quick. But as I'm saying here, though, the fruit flies are really hard to get rid of. I mean, this is well known. But there's one thing that I have found works incredibly well. And while I did feed this right before I did all this, and there should have been a lot of fruit flies in there because of that, there's larvae. There's another way to do this. And with this, I'm going to do what I did before. I'm going to feed a whole lot into this bin, and then I'm going to bury it. And when I say bury it, I don't mean like I'm just going to put a dusting of, you know, paper on top. I mean, I'm going to bury this food in here. Just so you can see more plastic in here from that shirt, which is fine. This will come out in the bottom, by the way, too. But I've tried all these different things, and nothing seems to be working incredibly well as far as just completely eliminating this population of fruit flies. And I really need to start getting rid of all of them. I want to be able to start doing my videos more frequently. It's slowed me down a lot because of how many there are, and it's really just inconvenient to have them in my bin. So I'm going to grab a whole bunch of food here. We're going to add a lot of food, and then we're going to bury it, and we're going to add a ton of paper to the top. All right. So I have my big container of food here. This is a ton of food, and we're just going to actually, you know what, I'm going to dig this down just a little bit more. Let me move this off to the side real quick while I'm doing that. I'm going to dig down just a little bit more. I'm going to really bury this in here. So we're going to dig into this corner over here and just move everything out of the way. There's more of this plastic. This plastic, as I said, will come out on the other side. I'm not quite too worried about it. I'm just trying to pull out what I can without taking any worms out. We're going to dig this into this side right here. We're going to dig down. This is almost all composted material down here. Normally you kind of harvest this stuff, but right now what we're going to do is I'm going to bury a ton of food in here to keep these worms healthy while we wait for this to process. So this is a massive mixture of food. It's all frozen, should be bug-free, although it won't matter at this point. Coffee grounds, carrot, banana peels. Now, what we need to do next is we need to bury this in. I'm not going to be adding too much water or anything like that. This is a little dry, but whatever. This is one of my go-to bins for most of my food and everything. So we're just going to bury this down in here. Just like that, really in here. Now, by the way, I don't know if you can see, there's all these bugs on here too, these pill bugs. They seem to be everywhere in here. I can't seem to get rid of those at all. So we have the shirt in here and stuff like that, perfectly fine. Big handfuls of worms still, lots of worms in here. I'm gonna just push that down a little bit, and we're gonna bury this a little bit more. Make sure everything's buried underneath. And now what we're gonna do is we're really gonna dump some paper in here. So I have ready to go probably about 6 to, well, no, I have over that. I have like probably 10 gallons of paper. So this is a 6-gallon bucket. And look at this. We're just dumping all this in. We're going to really make a massive, massive pile of paper here that we're going to spread out. And we're going to really bury this in. Okay? Now this is one of the ways that you can really, I have found works nearly 100% of the time for the issues with my worm bins. So that's one 6-gallon container. Give me just a second. And I'm going to dump in even a little bit more. All right. This thing is really filled with paper all the way up to the top, up to all the corners. Now, the way this works is with fruit flies is that they need to get to the surface. They need to find a pair. They need to match, breed, and then they need to dig down in to lay their eggs on top of rotting food. With this much paper in here, they can't do that. And this has been an effective solution I've used multiple times. Now, in my 10-gallon totes, this is a little harder to do because you don't necessarily have the depth that you need to do this type of burying. In these systems you can, and that's one thing I do really like about these urban worm bags and vermi bags, is that you can really bury stuff in here. In fact, I'm gonna add just a little bit more since there's a little bit more paper in here. So I add the rest of this. There we go. Spread this out. This is gonna hold the top up, but they're gonna not be able to get out. They're not gonna be able to find each other, and they're not gonna be able to breed. And within probably a month, they will be gone. So the problem is when you're doing this is the fact that you can't use this now. I can't bury any more food in here. I can't dig it up. Every time I do that, there's a chance that they're going to start meeting up. They're going to start making babies, and then you're going to have more larvae and then more fruit flies. So now I have to let this sit. Now I'm not going to show you the ending of this. This is just, I've done this before. I know that this works. You want to make sure you also get this into the corners also. I'm just going to slowly move away from the corners. But you know, so I've done this in multiple systems that I have, and this has almost always worked. The thing is it takes time and it takes a lot of paper because this is essentially a dry material that they have to work their way up through, and a lot of them might not make it up to the top, or they'll get lost going around through here, and then they just don't make it anywhere, and then they just die off. So this is one of the things that I find really works. Now, just to rehash, I have tried multiple things for controlling. This is a solution for when you have a massive infestation. For controlling, I still think a bug light works incredibly well. In fact, when I take this off, you can see right here, I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's actually a whole bunch of little dead fruit flies on here. And, you know, these things just work incredibly well, I have found, for controlling small populations. Like if you get 1 or 2 in your basement, I mean, like they're going to, or, you know, if you have this in your kitchen or something like that, like you have some bananas, the bananas are going to have fruit flies on them. This is going to take care of that, and it works really well. So the other thing that I have been using recently, these sticky traps, and these do work well. I find sometimes the hanging ones do work a little better, but you have to find some place to hang. I mean, you have to leave them out, and I also found that unlike these, whereas these are store really well, the hanging traps, the second I had them for over like a month, they just all stuck together and I couldn't get them apart. So I tend to buy these, and these get stuck inside your bins. Now, the last thing I want to show you here is my homemade trap. And yes, I know a lot of people have talked about these homemade traps, and yes, I have used them, and yes, I do use them. And as you can see in here, I've got some little floaters in this one right here. So this is a Talente jar with some apple cider vinegar that I add to it. I add a drop of dish soap into it. And then what I did here is I actually have this, I have a saran wrap on here. The saran wrap goes all the way over the top, and you puncture some large holes in here so they can get in, and then they can't get back out of it. So, and then I have this actually held down because of this container. I was able to cut a circle out of this lid and actually screw this on, so it's held on really well. And I do recommend using a good container. In fact, it'd be nice if it was a little bit wider, so if I stuck it in a bin, it's not going to fall over. But I have found that this works pretty well. This is a nice heavy container with how much I put in there. The lid is also, with this saran wrap, is going to make sure that it doesn't just evaporate out, which I've had issues with before. So again, all this stuff except for the Talente here is going to be available, so you can purchase it on Amazon down below. And, you know, as I said, for this bin, and it did work, but not as well as I hoped, I used this BTI stuff in a spray bottle. So I added this to some water, let it sit for a couple days, and then I put that in this sprayer, and I sprayed down the top here. So this was just a hand sprayer that I had, and it did work. I mean, this did work, it seems like, for getting rid of quite a few of them, but it still was not perfect. And maybe if they weren't in there to start, maybe it'd be different. But, you know, with them in there to start, maybe this doesn't work quite as well. But it didn't seem like it really took care of the massive issue that I had. So, with all that said, I'm going to go with my tried and true solution here, which you can see is just loading it up with paper and closing it up, and I'll leave this for a while. Now, this is my go-to bin. I add tons and tons of food. And there's a fruit fly right there. Tons and tons of food to this normally, and I usually just dump stuff in and go, but it's just going to need time. It's going to have to sit for probably a month. So today's January 26th. It's going to have to sit for a while, and you know, you can see that it's even held up on the top right now from the paper. So hopefully there's not much moisture in here that I added, so this paper is not going to get soaking wet. It's going to dry out. It's going to make it where it's really hard for these bugs to live in here. Now, I'm probably going to have to do this to all my other systems to try to get rid of these fruit flies, because they've gone from system to system to system, and they've hopped around, and it's just been impossible to take care of with how many systems I have in my basement. But that's the update on this. I think I'm going to go back to my tried and true method here of just burying deep amounts of paper in here to get rid of them. So thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, let me know. And let me know what you think about this down below as far as what systems you use to take care of fruit flies, especially when you have such a bad infestation that this had at the beginning. So thank you for watching.